It was an early morning in Trondheim. Moonstone Sweet was just getting ready to open his bakery for his customers around 8 a.m. One of his co-workers had mentioned that Hearts and Hooves Day around is just around the corner, which is just about a week or so. And even though that the bakery had always the best sweets prepared for that particular holiday, just even though for only for one day. But one of his coworkers actually had asked Moonstone Sweet if he's getting ready for his that holiday with his girlfriend. But what his coworkers didn't know that Moonstone Sweet's girlfriend actually broke up with him only about a week earlier. And he hadn't even brought that up though. But now, especially now with Hearts and Hooves Day just around the corner, it's gonna be the first time in a while that he has no pony to celebrate with. And when he mentioned that to his coworkers that his girlfriend had broken up with him for about a week earlier, they were all shocked. Moonstone Sweet and his girlfriend had been together for about 2 years at this point, and it really was a very happy love. And they were all just like, "What happened? What made her to break up with you in the first place?" They all asked. At first, Moonstone didn't want to even to explain it in much detail. Only said that she was in love with, she wasn't in love with me anymore. He said, and that was a big shocker, even for his coworkers. And at this point, they had become like a family to him. But he said with a smile and said, "Maybe maybe it wasn't meant for us to be together. Anyways, I'm just looking forward to meet another pony to be with. And who knows, maybe I'll meet some pony before the holiday." His coworkers actually very optimistic, very construct how positive he is. But they all smiled and said, "Maybe you're her lucky enough to maybe meet your special soul pony, or perhaps the right one." Even though that Moonstone chuckled and said, "Yeah, it's possible." And then, just around when the time started 8 a.m., they opened up the bakery, and soon enough, customers started to report in. The rest of the day, things actually seemed to be normally. But that was until after lunch break when Moonstone actually received a request. There were actually a mayor who just walked in, and it was in fact his old friend, Sapphire Sparkle. Sapphire Sparkle and Moonstone Sweet have been close friends for several years, in fact. And she was the only pony that before his coworkers knew about his breakup. And she was always there to cheer him up, even despite he preferred to be alone. But she didn't mind to be there for him, though. But anyways, things were actually going to change for both their lives from this point. Sapphire Sparkle had ordered a big order for her for this party the next day, and she wondered if it was possible for Moonstone Sweet to maybe to handle the order. And he nodded and said that this will be prepared on time. So he asked exactly how much things that she needed and where they've been delivered and so on. She explains that she needs at least a dozen cupcakes, two cakes, two apple pies, and that was it. He promised to have all that things prepared. So she thanked him and paid, and he wrote down the order and put it back in the backstage because so the cooks or the bakers will actually have the things prepared. The rest of the day, Moonstone Sweet actually just having a normal day, have normal conversations with his fellow customers, like asking them how their day had been, and he asked the same thing and something like that. So, and he didn't mind though, and he loved to own his own bakery. This has actually been his childhood dream to be a baker. And one day when he discovered his true talent was in fact in baking, and despite from that, he wanted to work as a baker. Even though there was always some setbacks in the past. But one day when he was finally had opportunity to open his small bakery. And at first it was just small customers that but it was almost that they were about to close when Sapphire Sparkle had actually helped them to receive more customers. If it wasn't for her, Moonstone Sweet's dream to be a baker may have been ended if she hadn't even involved her to help him. And for that, he has always been very gratitude towards her. And even after all this, he really cares about her. And especially at this point, even she had recently had broken up with her boyfriend for about maybe after 6 months. She didn't find out him to be as caring as much as before. But even though she did break up with her boyfriend, even he was actually not much against it though. But after a while, she started being having a bit felt lonely. But at the end of the day, Moonstone Sweet closed his door at his bakery and returned home. But even at home, he still felt like lonely. He used to live with his ex-girlfriend, but now, having his apartment just by himself for the first time ever since they started dating, he was lonely. Even one of his neighbors were actually surprised when she noticed that his girlfriend had just packed some bags and just moved out. She was worried if something had happened. But Smooth and Sweet had just explained to his neighbor that they had just broken up and that she was moving out. And even though his neighbor was a bit older, but yet understanding, and said to him that if there's anything that he wants to do, maybe talk or maybe just hang out, he was always welcome over. And he thanked her. But things were actually starting to change. But the next day, Moonstone Sweet took the dipper personally to deliver the order that his friend Sapphire Sparkle had made the day before. When he arrived at her apartment, she had actually a few friends over there and they were surprised to see him, but she explained that he was the one who's delivering the order, which they all accepted. But even though when he was about to go, she asked him if he wanted to stay for a while. But he said that he couldn't. He still has to take care of his business, has his bakery. Even though that he knows that his coworkers is very capable of to take care of the bakery. But he would prefer to be working rather than socializing at the moment. And she understood. But he promised that they could maybe socialize maybe the next day or so. And she agreed. So for the rest of that day, Moonstone Sweet took care of his business as usual. Take care of the customers, helping about the baking, and took care of some of the counting and closed down the shop for the day and returned home, the usual. But the next day afterwards, when he went over to his friend Sapphire Sparkle's apartment, they were actually just doing the usual to do. Play some games like card games or just go to the park or something like that. But today, she had also something different in mind. Instead of what they would usually do, they actually went to the cafe nearby to have something to eat, which he didn't mind though. She explained to him that there was something about him that ever since they had been friends, that he was very optimistic, despite his breakup with his ex-girlfriend about almost a little bit or a week earlier. She hadn't actually seen any pony so optimistic, really very open about himself. But he said, truthfully, I'm not that much optimistic these days. Oh? Yeah, this, my happiness, my smiling just is like a charade, an act. Deep down, I feel a bit heartbroken. I didn't expect my girlfriend to break up with me like that. But I respect her wishes and her. What can I do? I mean, if she didn't love me anymore, and even I asked her if it was possible to try to make it work, but she said there was no point, and I accepted. But it was all the things like that happened, and Sapphire Sparkle felt very heartbroken to hear this from him. But then she asked, "So let me ask this: if somebody else did ask you out, yes, like a rhetorical question, but if somebody did ask you out, what do you say?" Oh wow, that's a good question. Well, if this pony were completely unknown, complete stranger to me, uh, maybe. But if there's someone I know, perhaps yes. But it depends. Like if the person, this pony, like me back, the same thing. Well, what about if we went on a date and Moonstone Sweet were actually got struck again? Wait, are you asking on a date, Sapphire? Yeah, yeah. In fact, I am. And he was shocked. He never even expected his own best friend to ask him out. But he said yes. But then he asked her when they want to go out. She thought maybe on Hearts and Hooves Day, which is only about a few days now away from now. And he said, why not? You pick a place and time. How about dinner? Restaurant near my street at 6 p.m.? Sounds like a good plan. And they enjoyed the rest of their time at the cafe. For next several days, things were just as normal. Smooth down the care of his bakery, but then Horse and Hooves Day arrived. He was actually still curious at if this date was actually a genuine or if it was some sort of make you feel better type scenario date or an actual official date. Even the one when he mentioned this to his coworkers who has been like friends to him, they were all surprised that they actually had found out that his best friend, Sapphire Sparkle, had asked him out. And they even asked if that she was serious, if this was an actual date or as friends were having dinner. And he said that he wasn't even sure himself, but he thought maybe that as an actual date. So he told them that he will tell them the next day how the things went, and they made that in him things promised. At 6 p.m., Moonstone was waiting outside Sapphire Sparkle's apartment, and when he saw her in this having a red bow in her mane and tail, he thought she was very beautiful. And he mentioned that, and she smiled to thank him. So they went to the restaurant, and he had a good time there. While they were having the dinner, though, he did ask her if this was an actual date or if just two friends have a dinner together. She admitted it was an actual date because for about a week she actually had started to have feelings towards him. and he was surprised. Despite having known each other for at least several years, it was only about a week she had realized she had feelings for him. She wasn't even sure how he'd respond to this, or even how to respond if she'd tell them before all this. So she made a plan to ask him out on a date and telling him during dinner about her feelings for him. And surprising to her, he did admit that he did like her a bit more now than before. Ever since that, ever since his ex-girlfriend broke up with him and he felt lonely, he has started to wondering if maybe that he's supposed to be with someone else like her. After all, they had known each other for several years and they have all things in common, like the same type of food. They like the same type of food, the same type of music, and they had a lot of things in common. So during dinner, he did ask her if she was willing to give them a chance, and she said yes, at least to see if there's some kind of spark between them. So after their hearts and hooves day dinner, he followed her back to her apartment and gave her a kiss and said that he had a great night. And she said the same thing and kissed him back. So for the next several weeks afterwards, there had been actually been hanging out a lot more, a lot been more dating, and now after their fifth date, they became an official couple. And even when he came to work one day, Moonstone Sweet's coworkers was really happy to see how happy he was. He was even humming a song for himself and just smiling. This was actually a very more positive thing for him, like it has been for the past few weeks earlier. But at least he was happy. And even Sapphire Sparkle was more than happy to be with her best friend and now her boyfriend. But it was something else, though. There was something about him that she didn't mind to be with. After all, he's a very positive, a very goofy, and just a fun pony to be with. And things turned to start looking forward to even more brighter for him. Until one single day, all would change. After being together for 2 years, Moonstone Sweet actually had plans to propose to Sapphire Sparkle. He had mentioned this proposal idea to his coworkers, and they were all very eager to hear and eager enough to do it. But he had no idea exactly how to do it, where, even though his coworkers they gave him some ideas, maybe do it at the park, maybe do it or maybe on the meadows outside town, or maybe during dinner, or maybe during a picnic. And he thought a picnic and at the park would sound perfect. A few days later, Moonstone Sweet brought Sapphire Sparkle to the park for the picnic, but although unknown to her, he was going to propose to her. And even after they had after they had eaten everything, he asked her to close her eyes, and she did. And when he said that she can open them, she saw the ring. And even before he could even ask her, she said yes and started crying. And even after all this, he was really happy that going to get married with his true love. Even both families and friends were all overjoyed. They couldn't even expecting anything better for them both. They decided to have their wedding within the next 3 weeks in Trondheim. In a way, both Sapphire Sparkle and Moonstone Sweet were really happy. 3 weeks later, on their wedding day, Sapphire Sparkle was really nervous how things gonna work. But her parents, especially her mom, told her not to worry. Things will go well. But what about Moonstone Sweet? Well, he was both nervous and excited at the same time, as his best friend told him, just relax, things will turn out getting well as planned. And even though Bolt was really happy to get married, and when he saw her first time walking up in the aisle with his wedding dress, he felt his heart was just stop beating for a second. She was the most beautiful mare he has ever seen, ever. Even afterwards, in the wedding reception or the party, everybody had a great time. With this amazing food, the dance, and music, everybody had a great time. Both families actually welcomed, especially Sapphire Sparkle's parents welcomed Moonstone into the family, and his family did the same thing for Sapphire. And even after all this, how did Sapphire and Moonstone felt right after this? Well, only one thing that was certain was that they felt very excited. They even went to Las Piezas for about a week for the honeymoon, and there they had this a great time, enjoying the rides and even enjoyed the magical shows that performed and just having a great time. After 3 years, Sapphire Sparkle and Moonstone Sweet both announced to the both families and friends they were expecting their first child within the next few months. Both families and friends was really beyond happiness. They couldn't even expect it. When they also mentioned they were expecting a daughter, and both Sapphire and Moonstone Sweet couldn't be more excited until one day when a daughter was born. They named the daughter Meadow Blue. As a filly, she was a bit shy, but she always loved to help her dad at the bakery. Even though she loved to help around at the baking with her parents, or especially her dad, there was something else that she really had in mind, or at least something else she loved, and that was flowers. She loved to help around her grandparents at their small home outside town, especially her grandmother with her flowers, and that has sparked her interest. She wanted to be a florist. She wanted to open her own store where she could sell flowers to any pony. And one day, she actually received her cutie mark as when she was helping her grandmother to take care of some flowers. And that sparked her interest even more to be a florist. And when she had told her parents about this, her dream job and that she would open a store, they were actually supportive. And they didn't judge her for anything for that. And in fact, when she was about 19, she was willing to open up her own store. And her own father, Moonstone Sweet, actually put some of his own savings to help her to open a small florist shop in town. And eventually, even though it was a very small, she maybe had to hire at least 200 ponies to help her. But eventually, her store became very popular with among ponies in town, and eventually she got a lot of more profit. So she decided to open a new store in a different place, maybe to open up to relocate her shop to more bigger place that she can have more bigger space and perhaps even hire maybe one or two more ponies. And eventually she did. And her store became so popular within the ponies, one of the ponies in town. And eventually she did fell in love with a stallion from Trottingham. And they actually got married after about 3 weeks of 3 years of being dating, and they had two daughters of their own. Moonstone Sweet couldn't be more happier to be with some pony like his own best friend. Even before they start dating, he felt like he felt himself and asked himself if he will ever find his true love at all. But eventually, when Sapphire Sparkle did admit to him that she had feelings for him, he was surprised but happy and was willing to give them a chance to see if it's something could work. And ever since then, he hasn't regretted at all. He was really happy to have found his true love and especially have a family with his best friend and his now beloved wife, Sapphire Sparkle. And this is how Sapphire Sparkle and Moonstone Sweet find a true love got a family together. The end.